Hello, everyone. My name is Paul. Welcome back to the new news. I hope that you all are having a great day. I hope that you, your friends, and your family are safe. And if not, I really do hope you do find that safety and security in the very near future, because there's a lot of pretty terrible stuff going on worldwide. But there is a ton of stuff going on in the world today, and absolutely a ton of it happening in and around Ukraine. There's a lot of stuff going on with a lot of humanitarian things right now. So we have some updates with some of the stuff that we're obviously supporting here, and some stuff that we've talked about in the past and we hit on during different topics. We're still looking for different humanitarian organizations to support. So please, if you know anybody, please let us know. Our link is in the Discord. But most importantly, even more important than that, is do support the organizations we have found thus far and we've gone through and vetted. We want to make sure that those are actual organizations. We went through, and made sure that 80% or more of all of their donations received actually go towards their programs and helping people globally. So please check them out. I mean, this whole project is to support and help people globally. We're never going to be doing super chats. We're never going to be doing anything like that. It's all going to be just helping people. So please be sure to show your support there. If you can't give a lot, give a little. And if you can't give anything at all, give us a like and subscribe. Let your friends know about us. The more people that come here and join us, more people, of course, get to enjoy the way we do the news. But most importantly, the more people that are here and the more good we can do and make a meaningful impact in people's lives all over the planet. So with that endeavor, I thank you for the support you guys have already given us and the support you've given to the organizations that we found. And I hope that support continues. And with that, we're going to go right into the global news. And the first thing we have here is we have a couple of announcements. And HIMARS have arrived in Ukraine. So the Ukrainian forces that were brought out of the country, trained and successfully completed their HIMARS courses. Now, these systems have arrived in Ukraine along with their ammunition, so that way they can be employed on the battlefield. These are going to provide very long-range precision fires for the Ukrainian forces. It's going to be much better than what they currently have in their arsenal, such as the Tochka U. So this is coming directly from Alexei Reznikov, who is the Minister of Defense of Ukraine. So we got this directly from his official Twitter. So pretty awesome. Pretty awesome to see. These things are amazing. I've seen them in action when we were in Syria. That was what was at the location I was at is HIMARS. So very, very effective, very long range. These things can put around within, it's not like get it in the general area, it's a big missile. No, it's a big missile that you're going to put within feet of the person you want to hit with it. So very, very effective. But most importantly, the EU just got a brand new candidate. Ukraine was officially voted in favor for joining as a new EU candidate. So that really marks their first. So you had the actual steps of getting to this point, of course, where they had to conduct all those surveys within the nation, and those were submitted. They have now been made into EU candidates, and that kind of starts off the path of becoming an EU member. There's still a very, very long way to go, and there's no two ways around that. But hopefully, Ukraine will actually end up becoming a full-fledged member of the EU. They're not the only country that was admitted, though. Moldova was also admitted as an EU candidate. Georgia, however, was not nearly as successful. Georgia has a lot of things that they still have to work through, unfortunately. A lot of things specifically regarding the oligarchies and corruption. Ukraine and Moldova are not perfect in those respects either, but what the EU has said over the past few weeks regarding this is not the fact that they're perfect. There's still a long way to go. There's still a lot of reforms. In fact, even the president of the EU said that and went forward and said there is still a lot to do, but the important thing is that the reforms are being put in place and that there's an actual meaningful attempt to actually do this, that there's a meaningful attempt to actually end the corruption, end the oligarchies, to conduct reforms within these countries to improve the quality of life for their people, and that's really what they've been looking for. So we have a couple of different things from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, from President Zelensky, and other sources. So let's take a look. So just a little short announcement here. Just from so this is from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in Ukraine. So just a little GIF that they threw up there. But they also have this. So let's take a look.
In the shadow of war in Europe,
the European Council adopted today a historical decision.
It is granting the EU candidate status to Ukraine.
This is a crucial moment for us, for the European Union, also for Ukraine,
and for peace and democracy on our shared continent.
Because we share the European continent.
Russia's military aggression will not succeed in depriving people in Europe of their right to live a normal, decent life.
Ukraine will win. Europe will prevail.
Today marks the beginning of a long journey that we will walk together.
We will immediately launch the preparation for the integration of Ukraine into European structures and ultimate membership into the European Union.
With this historic decision, the EU sends a very strong message.
Ukrainian people belong to the European family. Ukraine's future is with the European Union.
Ukraine and the EU stand together for peace.
So cool announcement from Ukraine regarding that. And President Zelensky also had something to say about this. He says, I sincerely commend EU leaders' decisions at the UN, basically at the European Union Committee, to grant Ukraine a candidate status. It's a unique and historic moment in the Ukrainian-EU relations. Grateful to Charles Michael and van der Leyen, who is the president of the EU, and EU leaders for their support. Ukraine's future is within the EU. Embrace Ukraine. So pretty big moment for them. And you can see it was by a pretty big majority. So this is directly from the parliamentary room. If we get this picture up here. So this is the resolution, the candidate status of Ukraine, the Republic of Moldova, and Georgia. And these are the motions for the political group. So 529 votes in favor of. Pretty cool. So huge historical moment for Ukraine. This changes. A lot of people, they're not a full-fledged member of the EU. Let's get that straight there. They're not. They have not reached official EU status, but this means that they're going to start that integration along with Moldova into becoming members of the European Union. That means that there's going to be a lot more doors opened for them economically. The EU is a political and economic bloc, so there's a lot of political stuff they can do now. There's a lot of doors opening economically. And the EU is increasingly becoming also a security bloc as well on top of NATO. And we're going to see that as well. So pretty big change for them. And hopefully the rest of the process goes well, though they do have a long way to go. But in other great news, Patron won another award. So Patron won the Golden Paw Award from the Kennel Club of Ireland. And this is for his contributions for demining efforts in liberated parts of Ukraine. What this award goes to is the Kennel Club of Ireland actually sends this out. It's called the Golden Paw. And they send it to dogs who have contributed significantly to at least one human life, or to the saving of one human life. And obviously Patron has done quite more than that. So there he is in all of his absolute adorableness. Please join the cult of Patron with his new award. So this dog is absolutely adorable. Come on, just look at those eyes. How could you not? I want to boop the snoot so bad right now. It is ridiculous. Please, once again, join the cult of Patron. We have cookies. We chant his name. We will carry around dogs with vests like a suitcase. It will be fantastic. Anyway, but while that is all nice and warm and fuzzy that these things are happening, unfortunately, the situations in other parts of Ukraine are not so warm and fuzzy. And that immediately changes. We go from one end of the spectrum to a complete other with this next topic, and that's because incendiary munitions were used in the Sumy Oblast. So more and more shelling is occurring in the Chernihiv and Sumy Oblast. There's no military incursion per se, but there is shelling going on, at least within the border areas. And we see pretty clearly today the use of incendiary munitions. These are banned by the Geneva Convention and also under customary international humanitarian law. These cannot be used in warfare, and these are being used on civilian, civilian targets. And when I say they're banned, they can be used militarily. They can be used on military targets such as ammunition depots, fuel depots, that kind of stuff. You cannot use them against people. You cannot use them in highly concentrated civilian populations in any capacity. So, like what we saw at the Azovstal, Mariupol is a highly concentrated civilian populace. They could not have used that there, no matter if there's a military target inside or not. And that goes into other considerations they have to take into account for. And then also, it's being used on people. We've seen it used on Ukrainian trenches before. So that's a use against personnel. But just take a look at this. Like this is no clearer an indicator of incendiary weapons use. We've seen it being burst over the top, but people could say, "Oh, those are just smoke or whatever." Which smoke is usually created with artillery using white phosphorus, which is an incendiary munition. But just take a look. Really short, but it's pretty clear what that is. I mean, those are incendiary munitions. Those are that has burst over, and they just happen. It's really wet here. Things will catch fire super easily, even though they're burning at thousands of degrees Fahrenheit. But they're just sitting there burning in the mud, and there's no way to put them out. Like, they just have to extinguish on their own. There's no way to put this stuff out. So they're just going to lay there and burn, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. Jump down here to Kharkiv. The UK's humanitarian assistance aid, or humanitarian aid, has arrived. The British government, and this is coming from the press service of the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration, quote, "The British government has transferred about 20,000 food packages to Kharkiv region as part of a new humanitarian aid package," end quote. And the removal of unexploded ordnance will continue into the far future. We're seeing the repercussions of this from Patron and other individuals throughout the country, because there's a massive cleanup effort that is already underway. They're not wasting any time, but it will take a very, very long time to clean this up, if it ever is completely cleaned up. The remnants of unexploded ordnance from this war will continue for decades. It will be a persistent issue for decades, for farmers in their fields, for children, running around in the woods, for all of that. It will be a constant problem. Still is for the rest of Europe due to World War I and World War II. That hasn't completely gone away in Ukraine either, though it's much safer now. But it will be decades before this ordinance, which is fresh and has not deteriorated to a state, and has not been cleaned up at this point, will be rendered, areas will be rendered completely safe. And this is pretty evident as the Ukrainian EOD teams are removing Fab 500-pound bombs from the city of Kharkiv, and they are obviously taking out their fuses and pulling them out of things like the rooftops of buildings. So let's take a look. So this is the Fab 500 that they're pulling out here. And it just went straight into this apartment building. Once again, this really tells you, like, this is an apartment building. Like, this is an apartment. I mean, there's someone's blankets up there. Like, this is not a military target. This is a 500-pound bomb. Luckily, it didn't go off. That just came crashing through the roof. Like, this means, this right here is all you need to know. Also, the fact that the background is completely charred and blackened should tell you. But this is a major civilian population. This is just an apartment building. Like, this has nothing to do with military. Like, this is not a military location. So why is there a bomb dropped here? Well, war crime. Let's take a look.
Нас викликали сюди 20 березня. Орієнтовно у нас з'явилося 19-го. 20 березня були вилучені підривники і поставлена бомба в безпечне положення. В даному випадку класна авіаційна бомба 500 кг. Сьогодні було проведено роботу інженерної техніки крана з аварійно-рятувального загону, який зміг забезпечити вилучення даної бомби з криші 9-поверхівки, тому що на даний час місто умовно спокійне і дозволило виконувати ці роботи. Ви бачили, що час на виконання був втрачений дуже великий. В той час, коли йшли обстріли, коли йшла безпосередньо війна по місту Харкову, то ці роботи, звичайно, ніхто не проводив.
And, you know, everyone talks about how, you know, how this must be a stressful job, because I want you to remind you, like, they put this in a separate part of the vehicle, which is back here, that this is explosive, right? Like, this is armored and it's explosive. This is a 500-pound bomb, right? Like, if something goes wrong and all of a sudden this stuff just decides, like, this truck will not exist in any way, shape, or form should this thing go off in the back. Like, it just won't. I cannot imagine being a member of EOD, and I know people from EOD, and they're really cool guys, but that is just not for me, man. Not for me. As you jump down here, UK Ministry of Intelligence gives another daily update, and this is in the Luhansk region. So, actually, I think I may have pushed this up a little too far here. But we're going to go ahead and drop this down here, because we do move into this region next anyway. And let's just take a look. So, this is from MI6. So MI6 is the UK's intelligence ministry. And they say that since the 19th of June, Russian forces have highly likely advanced over 5 kilometers toward the southern approaches of the Donbass city of Lysychansk. Some Ukrainian units have withdrawn, probably to avoid being encircled, and Russia's improved performance in this sector is likely a result of recent unit reinforcement and heavy concentration of fire. Russian forces are putting the Lysychansk-Severodonetsk pocket under increasing pressure with a creeping advance all around the fringes of the build-up area. However, its efforts to achieve a deeper encirclement to take western Donetsk Oblast remain stalled. And that's really what we see here on the map. They have multiple axes of advance, including this one from Popasna, but it's stalled. We're seeing, minor gains, minor movements, but like I've explained before, this front line. It may seem like it's it stays in place here, and that's just because we only move it when we get enough data to do so. But this thing is it's like a guitar string. It's constantly vibrating one way and the other, and it's constantly changing. So this is a very fluid thing. It's like water sloshing around in a cup. I mean, it's just constantly changing. These things are not staying the same. As I speak now, there is an advance by the Ukrainians in one sector, while there is an advance by the Russians in another, and that is going to be, then they're going to be counteroffensives, and then they're going to try to flank each other and outmaneuver each other. This thing is just constantly changing. So there is no true map that is going to illustrate very well the current situation. No matter how much you try, it will not. Severodonetsk, we haven't changed it for days now. And that's just because there's not enough information coming out to say we can. There is some stuff saying, there's advances. They've been pushed to the outskirts of the city. Ukrainians have. But we still know that there is heavy fighting. And we can actually see that here as more intense combat footage is just coming out of Severodonetsk. So let's go ahead and take a look.
Window 4. Fuck.
Anybody got eyes on?
Negative. Do you have your iPro on?
So he's obviously up in a sniper hide, as we can see by a. There's a sniper team member over here. Let's see, yep, there he is. So these guys are obviously in a sniper hide. These are the Foreign Legion. And this Foreign Legion is heavily engaged there in Severodonetsk. So that's what we're seeing a lot of times is Foreign Legion members posting a lot of this stuff, and that's just because a lot of them are bringing GoPros and whatever else with them, and most of them are already combat veterans anyway, so they kind of already know like what they're doing. So they're not. In order to do something like that, you kind of have to be a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. That's just the fact of the matter. I mean, in order to do something like that, you have to be a little bit, you have to be a little bit up there, kind of a little bit crazy, even no matter how good the cause is. But that's pretty much anybody that does any jobs like this, including in standing militaries. You kind of have to be a little bit of willing to be kind of an adrenaline junkie on that, because this stuff is an adrenaline boost. Oh my God. This will get you pumping. But yeah, it's really cool to see this kind of footage being coming out. This is very intimate stuff. You're not going to see a whole lot of this. There's really limited footage. If you go and look at stuff even from Afghanistan and Iraq, a lot of that footage is this. You're going to see the same footage over and over and over and over and over again, because while a lot of people brought their GoPros and a lot of people videotape what was going on, a lot of times guys just don't want to show that stuff off, no matter how cool it may seem to us and to everyone. It's just not, a lot of it's very intimate. You don't want to show necessarily everything you did, because a lot of it had to include really bad things you had to do. And as we jump down here to Kadivka, another ammo depot was destroyed in the city of Kadivka, and it is currently sitting there and cooking off. So let's take a look at that. So it just kind of keeps going and going and going. Which, when you have that much ammunition stored in one place, that's going to be the case. And air defense systems over by Alchevsk are actually failing, and they're being deflected by incoming Ukrainian missiles. Take a look at this. This air defense missile, it gets fired by the Russians, right? It hits the missile it's supposed to be coming in, doesn't detonate, and gets deflected off of it and sent straight back into the ground, right where it came from. Denied. Just take a look at this. This is wild. I've never seen this before. Just gets straight deflected back. I mean, it goes up and it hits it and immediately gets sent right back where it came from. That's wild. That's like the two rounds that hit each other in Gallipoli and are stuck through each other. If you've ever seen that very famous photo, look at the round, or look, it's the two bullets from Gallipoli. They struck each other midair and one shot through the other one, and they're still stuck together to this day. It's like that level of crazy. So let's go ahead and take a look. Yeah, that Russian crew is having a very, very bad day. And while the HIMARS have arrived in Ukraine, Ukraine's not waiting. They're not waiting for these to get to the front line. They need to hit Russian ammo depots now, and that's what they're doing with their Toshka U's, because those are precision guided munitions, and we can see that in effect here. So it does have copyright music, unfortunately, but we can see pretty massive launch of Ukrainian Toshka U's here, targeting those targeting those Russian ammo depots. Probably some of the similar stuff we saw today. That guy was a little late, I think. And away they go. Down here in Donetsk, even more man material arrive. I mean, we cover this almost every day, but it's insane that the meat grinder doesn't. It's almost industrial. It's almost like a butcher mill. It's just a constant stream, conveyor belt of men and material sent to be ground up into hamburger at the front line. That is all that Russia is doing. Just numbers of whatever they can get their hands on. And we just see that here. We see it every day. More and more and more. Take a look. By the way, folks, this is the 21st century. What is a log on the front of your armor? This is also supposed to be the thickest point of your armor, by the way. What the hell is a log going to do? What is going, like, if it's going to hit you and it's going to penetrate your 12 to 25 millimeters of armor, which is what this has, by the way, because it's a BMD, then a log is not going to stop it. Like, that's not going to... Your armor will protect against small arms fire. You don't need something on the front to do that that's going to weigh it down. Like, this is... I don't think the Russians understand the concept. This is just coping with the inevitable. I'm sorry, but it's not doing... You are in a tin can that will be penetrated by anything larger than 7.62, essentially. There's no hope for you, the crew, or your very, very poorly designed ammo racks. You are screwed. You are not meant to be used in this capability. It's over. Bye. So, it was my job for a long time to identify these things, but we can tell that this is likely a VDV unit. And the reason we can do that is because of the vehicles being used here. This doesn't make it a guarantee, but it makes it pretty likely. These are BMDs, which is it's a lighter version, essentially, of the BMP. They follow very similar traits. This looks like it's either a BMD, I would say either a 3 or a 4. I'm going to go with a 4 based off of the optical mountings on it. And the dual purpose gun here. You have two main guns mounted side by side in coaxial fashion. But these things are really cool in concept, but really terrible in design. They follow the exact same design structure, essentially, of a BMP, except it's shrunk. And what these are meant for is the VDV in Russia are paratroopers. They're meant to conduct air assaults, and they're meant to conduct, paratrooping operations, meaning that they jump out of planes with a or a helicopter with a parachute. These BMDs, the cool thing about them is that their suspension, so their tracks, they can actually retract. They actually can slim down even further, and they basically collapse on each other, and this makes it so that they can be loaded into aircraft and transported in an air assault, or if they capture an airfield, they can land these in there, and now the unsupported VDV who are waiting for ground troops to meet with them behind enemy lines can now have some type of armor, to use against them instead of just basic infantry. So, no, these are not World War II tanks, by the way. These were developed. You'll see if I backtrack here a little bit. That looks like, well, actually, that's most of these look like they're BMD 4s, which is their newer modern variant. That one looks like it has the coaxial. That one has coaxial. Sorry, I'm swapping through here. See if there's any of the old variant. That's a 3. And that's a 4. A 4. Yeah, so all these look like they're the new variants. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So these things are extremely lightly armored. These things have 12 to 25 millimeters worth of armor. Very light. A 50 cal will punch through one of these things realistically. It might not in all angles, but especially if you're hitting the rear, which is the thinnest armor, or the side, these things are very thin. They're essentially tin cans, and their only purpose is to be used by the VDV. I believe we've seen them used in other purposes as they're losing APCs. The logs at the front. No, that's not really a World War II thing. That's just that. I mean, it is, but it's not. If you're referencing the movie Fury, where they bounce a tank shell, a Tiger tank shell, which is an 88 millimeter gun off of the side of the Sherman using logs, that would have never actually happened. The 88 millimeter would have punched through the side of the Sherman. It would have immediately gone into the crew compartment, probably obliterated the gunner and turned him into nice pieces of spaghetti all over the inside of the tank, as well as probably killed the commander of the vehicle, and immediately started a fire inside of the turret, and inside of the cabin, inside the tank, and probably detonated the ammunition as well. Like, it would have just went through it like butter. And that was an 88 millimeter gun coming off of a Tiger. Modern anti-tank weapon systems are heat rounds. They don't care about the fact you put a bunch of nice flammable logs on the front of your tank, especially when they're this thinly armored. It really isn't going to do a lot. I mean, a 50 cal is going to go through that. It might help the frontal armor absorb it, but probably not. The frontal armor, even on the BMD, is not very thick. So, not very good to begin with as a vehicle. It's great if you don't have anything else, but you can't carry a lot of troops. You don't have a lot of ammunition space and storage space for it. It doesn't carry a lot of fuel. These things are meant to support ground troops. It's meant to support, paratrooper operations and air assaults until main ground forces link up with them. Great in concept, but in the use we're seeing here, they're not effective. They are not effective at all. Literally, if you have any kind of rocket, it will punch through this thing. So So anyway, that's for you. Yeah, it says a Russian VDV company with a BMD4 and BTR MDM in the Donbass. Yeah, so that's it's a VDV company. Yeah, well, that makes sense, and we know, and we also know of that there is a VDV regiment that is operating down here, so it does make sense. Jump down here over to Bezimene. A Naslin reportedly is preparing to be executed. This was reported by the BBC, and he was born in the UK. He also fought with the Peshmerga and the YPG in Syria before he ended up joining the Ukrainian Marine Corps back in 2018. He holds dual UK and Ukrainian citizenship. And he was captured during the Battle of Mariupol, and he was sentenced to death by the DNR. And reportedly, he phone called home to his family. His friends on media are stating that they kind of blew it out of proportion. There was an Instagram post by one of his friends saying that it was getting blown out of proportion. But That was deleted, unfortunately, before we could get it onto the stream. But he's reportedly getting ready to be executed. So he's not. That's the thing. I don't think he's. I mean, I would not like to be executed. I kind of have that self-preservation thing, but at the same time, the man went through the Battle of Mariupol. Like, the man went through the Azovstal. Like, he was already expecting to die. Like, you're gonna kill the guy that already, he had nothing to lose. He was already expecting to be a dead man. He was a dead man walking. He knew that. Everyone knew that. Everyone in the world knew that. So he's probably telling him, like, yeah, I'm about to be executed. I want to tell you I love you. Bye. Like, because that would be me. I wouldn't. Like, if I was in his shoes, I can't imagine that he's probably afraid of this. And I think that's probably what they're saying. His friends are probably saying, but I can't confirm that. And all that remains of, I talked about this yesterday, all that remains of some of these villages is just destruction. They're just rubble. Many of these villages, they're just unnamed, or they're unincorporated, or they're so small that it would take us, a small eternity to zoom in on some of them. I mean, look at this. It's just a single street with a row of houses, and it just kind of branches off. There's maybe 30 people that live in Zaporizhzhia. Not very many, right? It's a very small little village. This thing's probably been wiped off the map. And that's what we see here. This is from the Azov regiments from the Dnipro Oblast, and they're operating down here along the Donbass front, and they're showing us exactly what we've been talking about. There's just nothing left. So there just really isn't anything left, and that's all across the front. You're just going to see that over and over and over again as this war continues. Is a lot of those villages just gone, their residents evacuated, killed, forcefully deported, like that. They're just gone. But I got a comment from Rooster. He said, "I wish I had a javelin." Yeah, man. So as an 0352 of the Marine Corps, right? It's aside from being an LAR, which is light armored reconnaissance, so you drive the LAVs. You pretty much get made fun of because you're the next closest thing to a pogue, and so everyone else in the infantry calls you a pogue. We call them crunchies because, well, we drive around in vehicles in a cat platoon and they get to hike, so they're crunchies because they're easily ran over. But a little bit of morbid humor for you. But no matter what, every single time there was a javelin shoot, every single time you get made fun of because you're like the pogiest type of the infantry, and then you get a javelin round off, and they're like, I know we make fun of you and all, but that was pretty sick, man. So yeah, javelin's probably one of the coolest weapon systems I have ever had the privilege of handling. And I fired the 50 cal, and you know what? I rock a 50 cal. The 240, I put a lot of ammo through 240. It's like a laser beam. It's amazing. But the javelin's a whole different type of cool. It really is. It's probably one of the coolest weapon systems I've ever seen. I love it so much better than I love the tow system. And there's nothing else in the world really like it. Even the in-law, I would say, falls short of the javelin. It's just not as effective. It's really great at close range, which is the perk of the in-law, but you know, the javelin's just dope, man. I don't know what to tell you. It's cool. It's a cool weapon system. There's so much you can do with it. So, but moving on from that small tangent, this is actually something that, you know, most people who ever work with a mortar knows how to do this. Like, if you've ever actually been trained how to use a mortar, you know to do this. It gets drilled in your head. Sink your base plate. Don't start shooting until you sink your base plate, because then all your rounds are going to be off. Well, these guys didn't listen to their instructors, if they even never had one. Take a look. So these are Russians. This has copyright music. So these are Russians, and they're firing mortars at Ukrainian positions. So these guys are one-man gunning it. You know, that's fine. You can do that. But this guy didn't sink his base plate. Just look at the angle on that thing. Your base plate's not supposed to be angled. Your tube's supposed to be angled. But just take a look. And that's why. Because now this guy has to reset up the gun. That position's probably just screwed to begin with, because there's no, like, it just kicked up a giant clod of dirt, right? Like I said, this is supposed to be flat. You can see the other ones over here where you don't see anything sticking up. It's just the tubes angled. This guy angled the whole gun, and now he's going to have to reset up that gun. He's going to have to realign it. They're probably going to have to move over, you know, to you know, a flat space. They're going to have to sink the base plate in, because that's exactly what this guy's problem was. And they're going to have to recalibrate. They're going to have to re-get the direction, deflection, the elevation of the gun from the FDC. He's going to have to resight it on the aiming stakes. He's going to have to completely zero out the gun and then redo everything, while all these other guys are on target now. So that gun, you know, if this is a 4-gun section, like, that gun's down. Like, he's just not going to be firing. And if you have to do a fire mission, like, that's just not good, which is what he's doing. This is a live fire mission. This isn't like a training event or something. So, yeah, so way to go, guys. You, like, one of the first things you get taught. One of the first things you get taught. The fact that he also doesn't blow his fingers off is absolutely impressive. Because, man. But as we jump over here into Mykolaiv, the destruction becomes pretty apparent, because while that guy may suck at firing rounds, not everyone in the Russian Federation does. And they hit Mykolaiv quite often. We've seen them hit them several days in a row. And it seems to be increasing as that counteroffensive by Ukraine continues. But teams from the Ministry of Internal Affairs investigate the different bomb craters that are left around, and it really shows you the power, the immense power and destruction of the ordnance being leveled against Ukrainian cities. It's insane. These are not small munitions. These are massive amounts of artillery. These are massive rounds that are going downrange. A lot of these are very long-range artillery rounds, you know, medium to long range missiles and rockets. These things have a pretty hefty payload, and they're doing some pretty big devastation. So just take a look at some of this. These are some photos. I mean, this man's, I mean, look at the crater's as tall as he is, if not taller. I mean, sinking. These guys are sinking in these things. They're huge. This is like the man-eating craters of World War I. And you can see, you know, the bits and pieces of shrapnel that are left over. And these are also quite large. These are pretty large bits of shrapnel. Like, that's going to take your head clean off if it hit you. And this is what's going into people's apartment buildings. This is what's going into, you know, everything. Everything. I mean, your home, your business, your apartment, the underground, you know, I mean, that crater, I mean, if you built yourself, like, you're in your basement, like, that crater's your basement, right? Like, if anybody took a direct hit with one of those, like, it's just gone. There's nothing you can do. And that just ought to show you the immense power of some of the stuff being thrown into these cities, because Mykolaiv is not the only one. I mean, Kramatorsk, Severodonetsk, Zaporizhia, Kharkiv continues to get bombarded, and it's terrible, absolutely deplorable. But that actually wraps up everything inside of the country of Ukraine, but we do have plenty of stuff outside the country of Ukraine as well. We're actually going to start off up here in Moscow, because we have a couple of different things happening from Moscow. And the first thing is that the State Duma is considering a law to pay their national debt in rubles. And so the State Duma, the Russian Duma, is the parliament of Russia. And they're considering a law in which they no longer pay debts in foreign exchange, but instead they're going to make the payments in rubles, strictly in rubles. And we can actually see this from their official VK, which is a Russian news, or that's like a Russian social media, is VK. This is their official post here. Pull it up and translate it for you. Come on. The debt is red. Russia will pay the national debt in rubles, and the corresponding bill was submitted by the State Duma for consideration. The document suspends from January 1st, 2022 to January 1st, 2023, the norm of the budget code, which according to the settlements, the external bonded loans must be made in foreign currency. Basically, we won't be making those in foreign currency. We'll be making those in rubles. And this is from the database of the Russian Duma. So we had some issues trying to get anything out of the Russian Duma until we actually happened upon this, because their official page, nothing actually links to this if you go to their official Duma website. This is all of their legislative, this is their you can go and you can look at their political agenda, but unfortunately everything is in Russian and everything's like a PDF document. It's really hard to read that stuff if you can't translate directly, unless you get some extensions, which we're looking at. I'm trying to find some that'll work for this, but this lists everything. The submission right now, it's been submitted to the Duma. You still have the reviews, over the draft, but we can see, the text of the draft, the explanatory note of the law, the financial economic justification, the cover letter for the Committee on Budget and Taxes, and finally through to the passage of the law. And that's what's currently ongoing here. It's been sent to the Duma committees, on budget and taxes. So pretty substantial thing here. But we can actually take a look at this. Open it up here. So this right here is the actual, is actually basically the summary of this bill. This is the actual scanned in from the Russian Federation as of yesterday, the 22nd of June, 2022. So if anyone is interested, then feel free to read this. You will need to translate, however. So I apologize for that. But pretty massive. And it's a pretty big find. But if you're interested in the political agenda of what the Russian Federation is and any of their announcements, if you go to their website and you go up to social media, you can go on to VK or any of the other 3 Russian social media sites that they're on, and that's where they post their actual updates on. They do not maintain an update on the website. The most current thing is from June 12th, but they post almost every day on those. And also, that will also give you a link to this under their social media. I recommend just going to VK. It's the easiest one. They'll pull up their database. And as long as you can read Russian, you can look at their entire political agenda moving forward, any bills that get submitted, and if you have any background knowledge on how bills are for them, you can also search their entire database regarding their documents as well, their lists, their committees, and everything else. So for anyone here that's interested in that kind of stuff, there's a gold mine for you of information coming out of Russia. But as those HIMARS did arrive in Ukraine today, a Russian MP, so a member of the Duma, Yuri Shvetikin, I can't pronounce Russian, I'm sorry, I barely speak English, guys. Yuri Shvetikin has stated that Russia should hit the U.S. Embassy in Moscow with missiles in retaliation for HIMARS arriving in Ukraine. What is wrong with you? Like, come on. Like, what is wrong? What is wrong with you? Let's get this translated. So, of course, they have. Hey. So the United States is moving step by step towards a world war. This weapon type should not be underestimated or overestimated. I mean, just insane. Why would you? Let's see what else we got. I mean, this guy's just upset, apparently. Alright, well, lovely news. Why, right? Why? In Moscow? You're going to hit it with missiles in Moscow? Yeah, an active war. They call it an active war. Yeah, well, they've been calling everything an active war. And, like we called yesterday, of course, the Russian delegation to the OSCE, which just released it just publicly released its report regarding its findings in basically crimes against humanity and the breaking of the Geneva Convention, war crimes inside of Ukraine. The OSCE from the Russian delegation condemned the report. In fact, we're actually going to go here. This is their official Twitter, and they stated that in the absence of a proper reaction on the part of the OSCE project coordinator in Ukraine to Kyiv's violations of its obligations, we conclude that the work of this structure has become detached from its tasks. What? You're part of the... It was done under the Moscow mechanism. Like, when it's done the correct... You can't just say it's become detached when you yourself are attached to this organization. Like, you can't just say this. Like, you can't just go... And it addressed Ukrainian war crimes. We went over that yesterday. We looked at it. It talked about Ukrainian war crimes in it. What else do you want? It happened under, both people are at fault. There's no such thing as innocence, and the OSCE clearly stated that. And they had, 3 weeks to do it under the Moscow mechanism? 3 weeks to conduct the investigation? So it's not even that thorough. And the OSCE is going, well, you're detached. There's no way that you can condemn us in that way. And Ukraine needs to, be attributed for their war crimes and everything. Like, yeah, Ukraine's probably going to. But there's a war going on right now, guys. We have to finish the war, and then we get to bring people to justice. Occasionally we get the onesies and twosies we can do throughout the war. But, the ICC hasn't even concluded their investigation. They probably won't until a long time after the war's over. There's so much stuff going on. And they're just like, no, we're not doing any of that. They're detached. They are no longer capable of doing their tasks. It just doesn't work anymore. Because it really showed us in a bad light. The report did. Congratulations. An active war. So that going back to the comment of an active war that before I hit on the OSCE. So believe it or not, that would be an active war to hit the U.S. Embassy. Why? Well, it's not just because it's the U.S. Embassy, but every U.S. embassy and every embassy in the world is actually when you're inside the embassy itself is sovereign territory of that nation. So the U.S. embassy in Moscow is actually U.S. territory. U.S. laws apply within the embassy. It's U.S. law. It does not apply, they do not follow Russian law. They don't have to. It is sovereign territory of whatever nation is ownership of the embassy or consulate. So not only would it be an attack on, not only is it technically an attack on the U.S. Embassy, it's technically also an attack on United States soil, sovereign territory. So it would be very much an act of war to actually engage a U.S. Embassy, especially at the state level. We've seen things like Benghazi, or back in 2020, the attack on the embassy in Baghdad, which was not a fun experience, and that was all, they weren't government-backed groups. I should say they weren't actual government forces conducting those attacks. They were militias. They were terrorist organizations, and you can't. It's not really an act of war at that point. We're already fighting a war on terror. But this would be different if Russia just was like, okay, we're going to hit your embassy with missiles then. That would not go well, and that would immediately escalate it to a world war. Immediately. Putin is quoted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs regarding the BRICS summit, and to quote, BRICS leadership is defining a unifying and positive course for forming a truly multipolar system based on international law and the UN Charter. President Putin. It's a defining, unifying, and positive course based on the international law and the UN Charter. Russia has broken just about every single bit of the UN Charter in the last 6 months alone. Like, every single one. They declared war during the UN Security Council meeting. I watched it live. It was during the meeting. Like, it's another territorial sovereign state. So it's based on territorial integrity, right? Which is the what everyone has been beating their chest for months. Why is that so important? Well, it even goes back prior to 2014. I mean, the annex. That's why Crimea is not recognized as being part of Russia on any international level. That's why the Donbass is not considered a separate entity. Is because states admitted to the UN maintain their territorial integrity while they're within the UN, meaning that once their territory is defined within the UN and their admission is in the UN, that is their territory. That is the territory of that country. So Russia can't just waltz into Crimea and annex it. Like, that's just not how it works. They can't do that. That violates the UN Charter. Something that possibly violates the UN Charter that they have stated, that Ukraine has stated anyway, is the fact that Russia, as the Russian Federation, was never brought into the UN. It was the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union as a country collapsed, which is true. There is some thought behind it. Is it going to gain any significant support? I don't think so, but it is something worth talking about. And someone just said, Avis Chang just stated that, Aravis Chang just stated that they should be out of the Security Council. That's a pretty highly that's a very well controversial debated topic you could go with, being the fact that they maintain the largest nuclear arsenal in the world. Running or not, I don't recommend that course of action. But and wait, Russia actually declared war. So here's the thing: they call it a special military. They announced that they were going to be conducting a special military operation in Ukraine. Okay. That was what was announced. Okay, they did not sit there and they did not write a declaration of war and have it wasn't voted by them, all of that fun stuff. It was the announcement of the special military operation. A special military operation is like, I don't know, we go into Yemen and bag an ISIS terrorist, or the UN, or when the U.S. Marines back in the 90s had to be sent to Somalia just to protect UN humanitarian workers trying to get food to the starving people, because Somali warlords like Aid was stealing it and giving it to his militias in order to bolster his local power. Like, that's a special military operation. That's not, you're invading a country with 200,000 troops is not a special military operation. Like, when we went to a war with Iraq and we sent, 500,000 troops in their country, we just declared war on them. Like, we just did. Like, it was the right thing to do. We declared war, and then we immediately bombed the hell out of Iraq, and then we immediately rolled through it with tanks. Like, the U.S., controversial or not, however your thoughts on the war, it doesn't matter. At least we actually declared the war. Russia hasn't officially done that. What they did announce, which was essentially a declaration of war, I should rephrase, is the fact that they would begin the special military operation in Ukraine, which immediately then launched the attacks, the attacks in Ukraine, in the invasion. So yeah, it's a war. I mean, Ukraine's a war. It's not a special military operation. It's just a war. Russia can call it whatever the hell it wants. It doesn't change the fact on the ground. And 200,000 troops invading a country is a war. Like it or not, that's a war. When you're actively in combat with another industrialized nation, it's a war. So that's the ultimate end of that. But yes, they did it during the UN Security Council meeting to avert the crisis. In fact, in the words, I believe it was Ireland's representative, we're encroaching on the edge of the, we're encroaching on the edge, and we're looking into the abyss, possibly about to fall in, I believe is pretty much the gist of what she said. And then after the announcement came from the UN delegate from Ukraine who was in the meeting, she said, "I did not realize how close to the abyss we truly were." And then he also said, war criminals do not, there is no place in heaven for war criminals, ambassador, they go straight to hell. Probably one of the most savage diplomatic lines I've ever heard in my life. Over here in Talitsa, which is over here in Siberia, an LPG gas station has exploded by an unknown cause. At least one person is reportedly injured. So let's take a look. No, this is not a Ukrainian strike, by the way. This is just a gas station exploded and we don't know why, kind of thing here. So pretty decent sized explosion. I'm kind of curious as to what the cause was. Jump over here, and this is right here on the border of Germany and France, and Germany is raising their gas alert. And that's because there's been an exceptionally low supply of gas coming from Russia to both Germany and other countries, and to include France. And France is also pretty heavily affected by this. And they've actually been attempting to stockpile their gas supplies because the cutoff is essentially inevitable. It's just a matter of when, and they would like to be prepared in the event it happens before they can fully transition on into other means of obtaining those supplies. But we're getting this from the AFP. Pretty significant change, because that changes a lot of things. In fact, major manufacturers are going to be pretty heavily affected by that. As we move over here, we're actually kind of in the middle of the ocean when we get to this, but not totally. This is the Azores, and Russian ships have started turning off their transponders when they're nearing the Azores Islands. And the likely reason for this is because one, turning off your transponder means you can't be publicly tracked, if that makes sense. And the reason they would do this is because reportedly Russian ships have been sailing under the flags of other nations, and that in order to circumvent sanctions against Russia. It wouldn't be something that has been unheard of. 3 tankers have vanished from the tracking systems as they approach the Azores Islands, about 950 miles west of the mainland Portugal. So this is mainly oil cargo. But there's also these reports Russians are sailing under the flag of Liberia to supply oil to Europe, circumventing sanctions. So some pretty big claims there, but it wouldn't be improbable, to say the least. Jump down here into Syria. Iran frustrates me sometimes. Well, most of the time, but Iran's kind of frustrating. For those that don't know, I served 4.5 months inside of Syria during my first deployment. I'm a Marine, so I spent significant amount of time in the Middle East, and specifically within this region of Syria, to not get too specific. But an Iranian state-run media channel called Press TV has claimed that the U.S. is training more terrorists and sending them to this region of Syria, which is in pretty much the Deir ez-Zor province. And they're saying that they're going there in order to help secure oil supplies for the United States. Essentially the same thing that everyone talked about when it came to the invasion of Iraq. Here's the problem with that. What they're really talking about, it's called the Omar oil fields. And the Omar oil fields are probably the largest in the country, Syria. They run basically from Kasham, which is down here over by Deir ez-Zor itself, all the way up to Al-Sawar. And the thing about this, actually if we zoom in here you can see them. So this is actually part of the oil production facilities here. But the thing about these is they're pretty much destroyed. They are just bombed to absolute hell. There is absolutely no economic gain by anybody for holding these things. It's literally just a strategic position, is all it is. It's just a strategic position. Putting forward lines of troops here is just strategic because it's far enough from the main part of the fighting along the Euphrates River, which is the deconfliction zone. So it's far enough back that Russian aircraft and American aircraft, which are both operating in here as they were bombing ISIS, don't have to, it's far enough back that Russian aircraft shouldn't mistaken the Omar oil fields for being an ISIS outpost. It should be pretty well known that they're American. And the SDF. So it makes deconfliction easier. It puts them far enough behind the lines that you don't necessarily put American troops in direct contact with anybody. Like, it's just smart. Like, it's just smart strategic and tactical planning. Do we train the SDF? And do we train other forces? Yes. Yes, we do. They're fighting the Islamic State. Yes, we do. They're fighting for a democracy. It's the SDF stands for Syrian Democratic Forces. They're fighting Assad, who's literally a regime who kills his own. He gassed his own people with chlorine gas, people. He gassed his own civilian population with chlorine gas. With the help of the Russians, by the way. So, yeah, we support them. I have no problem admitting that. I'm perfectly okay with supporting the Kurds and the SDF. I fully support that. Because they're being killed by their own government. That's not a good thing. They're being killed by another government, the Russians, who were there before the U.S. was. They've been fighting the Islamic State and took an immense amount of casualties doing so. So that way Americans weren't being killed in their stead. Yeah, I'm totally okay with us training some more people within the SDF and other groups and putting them in an area they already occupy in northeastern Syria in their own semi-autonomous state. I'm perfectly okay with that. And no, it's not to protect oil interests because the oil is bombed there's no recovering. There's no recovering that. It would take even if you had a U.S. company come in here as an investment, right? First of all, the security situation is absolutely deplorable here, obviously. And two, these things are so bombed out. You can see this is literally just blackened oil just spilling out into the desert. You have to do an environmental cleanup like you did when Saddam Hussein burned the oil wells in Iraq or in Kuwait. Which, by the way, if you jump down over to Kuwait real quick, we can see. Come on. You can see where the sand is still blackened from when he did it. Because there's no way to properly clean it up. It's just blackened in some places. There's no good way to clean it up. So, yeah, it's just, it would cost so much to invest into. But anyway, jumping into another part of Syria, the UN World Food Program must cut its rations. And that's what's happened. Most places around the world have had their rations cut by at least half in order to support emergency efforts to divert humanitarian aid into Ukraine in order to cover that humanitarian crisis as well. And this is affecting people in Syria rather heavily who rely on this humanitarian aid. Many of them are already require treatment for at least acute malnutrition. So we can take a look here. This is from the from the UN's World Food Program. Let's take a look.
يعني أنا اليوم عائلة 6 أشخاص، يعني عندي 2 مريضين، عندي 4 طلاب، ما خرج مستحيل. يعني اليوم طبختك يعني اليوم ما خرج، لا نجيب لحمة ولا نجيب شيء. يعني هلا بستنى من الشهر للشهر تجيني هالمعونة الحصة الغذائية، بطعمي ولادي فيها، بس ما بقى تكفي مثل قبل. في قبل كان فيها حمص، رز، فاصولية، فيها الشغلات إنه عم بستنوا الأولاد لتجي مثلا بيشتغلوا على الحمص، نسوي لهم فلافل، أسوي لهم شغلات، هلا ما بقى تجي، صارت كتير قليلة. لا مستحيل، إذا تلتغى يعني بضل أولادهم غير، يعني ما عندهم لا يأكلوا، يعني ما بضل عندهم شيء. يعني ما خرج أشتري اليوم قنينة الزيت حق 16,000 15,000، يعني أولت امبارحة 14، امبارحة 15، يمكن اليوم أكتر. هذا الغلاء ذبح. ما الحياة اليوم بس أكل وشرب، الحياة هاي يعني. بس أنا اليوم إذا ما أكلوا وشربوا شلون بده يتعلموا؟ هلا أيام بتصح لهم الوجبة، أيام ما بتصح لهم. يعني ما عم بحسن، أنا ما عم بحسن، وصلت لمرحلة ما بقى أحسن. يعني بدي مين يساعدنا، بدي مين يطلع بأمرنا.
And that's the reality. And that is the reality in Syria. I mean, you're talking about food prices that have, in the last 6 years, have really gone up over 800%. The war has destroyed most of their infrastructure, disrupted their supply, their ability to supply food to these regions. They live in a desert, by the way, an immense, vast, flat desert where you can't really grow a whole lot. And on top of this, the same issues that are affecting Iraq flow directly into Syria with the Euphrates River. So that drought and the subsequent famine because of it, and the destruction of crops, is also going to impact there too. Syria is just one bad, huge crisis, especially humanitarian-wise, on top of another. And that's just the sad reality of it. The conditions in Syria are utterly terrible. Some places are better than others, certainly. But it's sad to see. It's sad to see in person. It's sad to see here on the channel, several years later at this point. Because I left the country in 2018. And it's been 4 years. And I can still vividly remember, the kids that would run up to the wire, the razor wire at the end of the post, how scrawny they were. They'd go out and they play kickball out in one of our posts. We could overlook a kind of one of the city plazas, and they'd go out every morning about 10 o'clock in the morning, almost on the dot, and they'd go out and they'd start playing soccer. they had a cow that wandered out to the well every morning up until about Christmas time. That just looked incapable of being used for meat. It was nothing but a skeleton, and it's just terrible. The whole situation is just utterly deplorable. And we jump over here into the Far East, and this is between Miyakojima and Okinawa. This is over international waters, but 3 Chinese H-6 strategic bombers were seen conducting a flight over between these islands within the international waters. And this continues as tensions really rise between China and Taiwan. So cuts them right between the both. There is tensions between Japan and China as well, as they're laying claims in places such as the South China Sea, and especially building those outposts. But that is the strategic bomber there. Once again, they're flying over international waters, so while they're not breaking any laws or anything, it is still a show of force. We jump down here into Africa. We're actually going to hit up Mali first, and that's because 8 UN peacekeepers were injured in Mali. They were injured after they ran over a landmine or an improvised explosive device that detonated underneath their vehicle. They did survive, all of them. That they are receiving medical treatment at this point. This is really, Mali is quickly deteriorating as militias, the military junta, and the very powerful, believe it or not, Islamic State threat within this region is really plunging the whole country into chaos. And it wasn't a good situation to begin with, and it only continues to compound. But this is coming officially from the UN. This is from Olivier Salgado, who is the head right now of the Minimus UNS or UN USMA, which is basically he leads peacekeeping missions. So that's currently, unfortunately, what's happening within the country of Mali. And over here in Ethiopia, which is actually one of the places we talked about before. So Ethiopia is, there are parts of Ethiopia, specifically the Tigray region, which is up here in the northern section of the country, outlined here. You can see that little dot. But this part of the country, 90% of people require humanitarian aid to survive. And there's been ongoing conflict in the country. There's a severe drought here. There is already been food insecurities. There's been insecurities for quite a long time now inside of Ethiopia. That just is not improving at all. And unfortunately, because of this, according to the UN, nearly 20 million people are currently starving in the country, and they're attempting to provide enough food to help the 11 million most vulnerable at this point. And this is officially coming from the UN. Once again, these situations continue to deteriorate. The World Food Program is doing everything it can, but additional funding is needed. All right, like they need more. There is not enough. And luckily, though, once again, I normally do this at the beginning and the end, but we do have a fundraiser for Ethiopia and Somalia, its next door neighbor, in the description below, so you guys can go check that out and take a look. And that's really what I mean. When I say we want to be the news that gives back, I mean, that's what we're trying to do here. 20 million people. We jump over here into the United States, and the first thing we have here, or first couple things I should say, is the fact that there are more HIMARS are likely in Ukraine's future. So according to the spokesman of the Department of Defense, John Kirby, it is likely that Ukraine will be sent additional HIMARS in the future as they require more security assistance. This comes just as the U.S. announced a new $450 million security aid package already being sent to the country. So you take a look here.
I do think you'll continue to see systems like HIMARS going in future deliveries. I think that that's very likely. I don't want to get ahead of specific announcements here, but again, the president was very clear with President Zelensky. We're going to help them as much as we can, as fast as we can. And I'll tell you, the material is going in at record speed. I've never seen. It's just unprecedented, the speed with which security assistance is actually reaching the front lines in Ukraine. There's literally shipments going in every single day, and it's not just from the United States. We are the biggest donor, but more than 40 other nations around the world are also contributing security assistance in some type or form to Ukraine. Obviously, the Ukrainians are in this fight. They determine what operations they're going to conduct, and that's their right. The material that they get from the United States is now theirs. It's Ukrainian property, and they get to determine how they're going to use it. Now, obviously, we want to see Ukraine's sovereignty fully respected. We want to see Ukraine's territorial integrity fully restored.
So, pretty big word, or pretty big statement there coming from John Kirby right outside the White House. So, but that really kind of gives you the mindset as to where we're going to be. This isn't going to stop until the war is over. This isn't going to stop, and we're going to see more and more heavy weaponry being sent over to Ukraine as those aid packages come through, and as they start, talking to different suppliers of this stuff and looking at U.S. stockpiles and how to replenish them and how to keep maintaining assistance going to the country of Ukraine. So the Supreme Court ruled against New York's gun laws today. This is a pretty landmark decision regarding gun control within the United States, and that is a very controversial topic, so we're going to keep it with the facts here, and we're not going to get into one side or the other, whether or not this is good, bad, or otherwise. But the Supreme Court did strike down New York's gun laws, specifically New York City's gun laws, that prohibit the carry of concealed firearms inside the city of Manhattan and New York City in the boroughs. And this means that individuals can now carry those firearms. So this is really paving the way, and this means similar statutes in other country or in other cities within the country, including places like Chicago, places like DC, places like Philly, which have similar statutes to New York City in order to maintain, try to limit the amount of firearms within the city limits. That means that those will also similarly be struck down as a result. Then the decision was 6-3. And this is coming from the Associated Press. You guys want to take a look? And we jump up here, if it wants to load, to New York for our final topic. And there isn't a whole lot of good news today, unfortunately, guys. But the UN is requesting $1.2 billion to assist with the ongoing efforts to stem the global food shortage and to help increase those rations. They released a pretty horrifying statistic, and we take a look at this. Every single minute, one child is pushed into life-threatening severe malnutrition by the global hunger crisis. This is something that we've emphasized and talked about more, or pretty often. We talk about it pretty frequently. Children under the age of 5 are the most highly affected by these kinds of crises, specifically in Somalia and Ethiopia. They can't fend for themselves, and so children under the age of 5 are going to probably see the highest death toll. In fact, right here they're saying that there's 8 million children at risk of death across 15 of the most vulnerable countries at this point. So that's what we're talking about. Between this and Ethiopia, that really hammers home, our statement. We want to be the news that gives back. And as we wrap up the news here, guys, do check out that description below. Do check out the description, and check out the organizations there, not just for Ukraine. I know that's the hot topic. That's what most people are here to watch about and learn, what's going on inside that country. We're never doing super chats on this channel. We're never going to push merch. We're never doing any of those kind of advertisements. What we're here to do is we're here to give back to the very news that we deliver on every single day. We're here to help people globally. We want to do that. That's the whole goal of the project. It's why everyone volunteers on this. It's why I'm here doing this, because I want to report on the news, and I want to do it in a way that's different. It doesn't include that political theater that we see, in the mainstream news so often. It doesn't include politics. It stays, as unbiased as possible, or at least clearly states it when we have one. And it differentiates between personal opinions and the opinions that, of the channel, that kind of thing. I wanted this to be intellectual. I want it to be good, but I want it to all go towards a goal, a common goal that is only capable because you as the community make it capable, and that's to give back and help people globally. So don't just look at Ukraine, please. I know that's what everyone wants to do, but look at places like Somalia, and look at places like Ethiopia and Southeast Asia, which got ravaged by a super typhoon Rai. And we're constantly looking for more. So if you have more, the link for our Discord is also in the description. You can come and join it and just hang out, of course. But while you're there, let a staff member know of any other organizations. Mexico was affected by a hurricane. Brazil is seeing major landslides and torrential floods. Durban, South Africa was hit with major floods. India was hit with major floods. Afghanistan was just hit by a 6.1 earthquake that killed 1,500 people. There is ongoing drought and famine in Iraq, Syria, Sudan, South Sudan, Democratic Republic of the Congo, name a country in Africa, name a country in the Middle East. There are millions of people being affected, and we want to help them all. We want to do as much good as possible as we can with this project. I appreciate your guys' support so far, but if you can't give a lot to these projects, give a little. If you can't give anything at all, give us a like and subscribe, and tell your friends about us, because the more people that are here, the more good we can do with this thing, the more good that we can do with this channel, the more people we can help globally. We can literally help people from starving to death in Ethiopia, and we can help 8 million children from starving to death. We can stem one child, we can drop that from one child every minute to one child every 3 minutes or 5 minutes or an hour or a day, or hopefully stop it completely at some point. Now, we're not all going to be able to do this ourselves, and we understand this, but we can make a meaningful impact. And while that may not seem like a lot when you're talking about statistics, it means a lot to whoever has to look their child in the eye and say that they get to eat tonight. And that's a good thing. All it takes is to change the life of 10 people, and you can change the world. And with this, we hope to do that very same thing. So I'll leave you with that thought process for the night. I hope that you guys enjoyed the news that we delivered. I know a lot of it is kind of depressing, so relax. Tomorrow is Friday, so that's a wonderful thing. We get to enjoy our weekend after that point, and you guys get to relax a little bit and enjoy yourselves on this nice weekend. I hope you stay cool if you're in a little bit of a warmer climate, or you're having that heat wave come through if you're in the U.S. And I hope that you and your family and your friends remain safe in a lot of these difficult times. And if not, I hope that you find that safety and security in the near future, whether that's because of a security situation in your country, militarily or just in general, or if you're running into food and water insecurities, where you're at and with your family, or job security. I just hope that you find whatever assistance you need with that, and that your life improves for you, your friends, and your family. And I hope that you guys will join us once again tomorrow and continue this support. Thank the staff guys that they're the ones that really put this together. I really just lend my voice. But I hope that you guys once again will join us again tomorrow for another 24 hours of review regarding the news. And with that, my name is Paul from the New News. Have a wonderful night and stay safe, everybody. Good night.